इंडिया ने पिछले 3-4 दिन में बार बार जो एग्रेसिव मेजर्स अडॉप्ट किए हैं, जो डी एस्केलेशन की हम कोशिशें कर रहे थे, वो कोशिशें जो है वो एग्जॉस्ट हो गई हैं।
India has denounced IMF's frequent bailouts to Pakistan in the IMF board meeting. This as the International Monetary Fund cleared a $1 billion tranche for Pakistan. The amount is part of its $7 billion extended fund facility lending program and a $1.3 billion tranche under the Resilience and Sustainability Facility. Given the current conflict between the two countries, the news is indeed a dampener for New Delhi. And that's why India abstained from voting. Remember, in the IMF, directors can either vote in favor or abstain. There's no provision to vote against a loan or proposal. That's why India abstained. By abstaining, New Delhi conveyed its strong dissent within the constraints of the IMF's voting system. It used the opportunity to formally record its objections. But unlike in the United Nations, where each country has one vote, IMF voting power reflects the economic size of each member. For instance, countries like the United States hold a disproportionately high voting share. Thus, to simplify things, the IMF typically makes decisions by consensus. In that case, one wonders why New Delhi was unable to leverage its good offices with Washington to block this funding. In fact, India has questioned the effectiveness of the ongoing IMF assistance. It noted that Pakistan has received support in 28 of the past 35 years, including 4 programs in just the last 5, without meaningful or lasting reform. Sample this. The first IMF bailout package for Pakistan goes all the way back to 1958. And ever since, Pakistan has been knocking at the doorstep of the global lending institution on an average of every 2 to 5 years. To put it broadly, Islamabad's relationship with the International Monetary Fund has spanned 7 decades. In fact, its long history of reliance on the lending institution is what characterizes Pakistan's cyclical debt. According to the Observer Research Foundation, Pakistan's IMF debt prior to the release of the current additional funding stood at $8.3 billion as of 2024. And so, India has strongly highlighted the Pakistani military's continued dominance in economic affairs, which undermines transparency, civilian oversight, and sustainable reform. India firmly opposed providing funds to a country that continues to sponsor cross-border terrorism. It has warned that such support carries reputational risks for global institutions and undermines international norms. Remember, it is the civil-military dynamics that add complexity to Pakistan's economic governance. The military's dominant role in overseeing major economic projects, particularly those linked to CPEC, complicates the implementation of IMF-mandated governance reforms. This intertwining of military and civilian authority creates a hybrid regime scenario in which democratic institutions are weakened and accountability is diluted. The military's economic influence often results in strategic interests being prioritized over fiscal prudence. Why else would Pakistan afford to enter into yet another war with India? In fact, India has even cited a 2021 UN report at the IMF meet. It described the Pakistani military's economic interests as the country's largest conglomerate. India noted that the armed forces now play a lead role in Pakistan's investments, which means there's a greater risk of policy slippage under a civilian government, that of Shehbaz Sharif's. India also referred to the IMF's own internal evaluation report on prolonged use of its resources. That report flagged perceptions of political considerations influencing lending decisions in Pakistan's case. India warned that such repeated bailouts risk turning Pakistan into a too-big-to-fail debtor. And that, dear viewers, dilutes accountability and global norms, giving a direct pass to Pak-sponsored terrorism. And that's why Most significantly, India cautioned against the possibility of IMF funds being misused for military purposes or state-sponsored terrorism. This is what the Indian delegation said, and I quote, "Rewarding continued sponsorship of cross-border terrorism sends a dangerous message, exposes donors to reputational risks, and makes a mockery of global values." After all, it was Hillary Clinton who famously said that you can't keep snakes in your backyard and expect them only to bite your neighbors. You know, eventually those snakes are going to turn on whoever has them in the backyard. And that's exactly what IMF's endless funds have done to Pakistan, created a Frankenstein. While several other countries have echoed India's concerns, the IMF has noted that its responses are often limited by procedural and technical constraints. Well, clearly, those very procedural and technical constraints are costing India an arm and a leg, begging the question, is it not time to reform IMF lending? Even more so if countries like Pakistan have been funneling their repeated bailout packages to fund terrorism. The barbaric Pahalgam attack linked to Pakistan-backed terror groups underlines Pakistan's governance failures and their broader implications for financial stability. Without structural reforms and a shift towards more equitable economic policies, Pakistan will remain at perpetual dependence on external financial assistance used for terror support. For India, which is planning to throttle support for cross-border terrorism, New Delhi's homework should have started much earlier, especially considering the IMF's 3-year aid package was finalized in July last year. Now, India is all set to actively pursue getting Pakistan back onto the Financial Action Task Force grey list. Remember, Pakistan was placed on the FATF grey list in 2018. It remained there for 4 years as it struggled to meet the FATF's stringent requirements. But after taking effective steps to curb money laundering and terror financing, it was removed in 2022. Clearly, it was a bluff, because soon after, Pakistan was back to its game of proxy wars, leading to the massacre in the meadows of Pahalgam. But remember, it is the Financial Action Task Force that sets the global anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing standard through its comprehensive framework. And so, India must build a concrete case against Pakistan at the FATF. After all, it is the FATF framework that India can strategically leverage. That by focusing squarely on Pakistan's persistent failure to meet its obligations under FATF.